Hey everyone, welcome to the Mission Driven Life podcast, episode 201. This is the second podcast I actually did this today, but I'm glad that you guys can tune in because today's episode is on the law of navigation, which is the fourth law of leadership in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. So if you're a young leader, listen up, tune in, because look, the law of navigation is one of my favorite laws. Because I believe, every leader, especially if you're a young leader starting out, look, the law of navigation is one of the most important ones. If you look on a compass, there's four quadrants, right? So there's the north, south, east, west. There's four different types of directions that we could go. Now, us as leaders, look, we got to find that chance. I know there's a story that I had here when I was first starting out in the training space, right? When I first started having my workshops, I needed to have direction and I needed to have navigation, especially when I was leading the volunteer team. The team that we had, I needed navigation to make sure that everything that we were planning and in our leadership training was organized, it was set up. Everyone was on the same path. I needed to set up this law of navigation. I needed to set it up in a way that everything was in the right way, everything was organized, everything was headed in the right direction, and nothing was screwing up. Now, I'm not going to say things never screwed up along the way, right? Such as like picking up books from Staples. I never realized that I had to cut out the holes and I pump out the holes, and I had to get me and my team, Jose, we had to set that up and we were almost late. But navigation is one of the most important things in leadership. And I want to share with you something from the John Maxwell's book. But if you haven't donated yet, we're already at $590 in funds raised in the Young Entrepreneur Fund. Did you guys know that in this fund, if you're a young entrepreneur, that you get access to some of this fund as well. So if you guys need funding, you guys need some money for your business or your mission. You guys need funding for your mission or funding for your own business. Sorry, my dad was just sitting actually over there. If you guys need funding for your own mission, feel free to apply. We'll get that landing page set up. We haven't announced that part yet, but you will get access to this at some point. So for the law of navigation, guys, if you guys haven't donated, feel free to donate. And and if you haven't joined the Young Leaders in Action Facebook group yet, I suggest you guys get there. It's tons of huge value inside that place. Massive amounts of value that you guys can find leadership lessons inside that group. So I highly suggest that you guys check that out, yeah? Now today I'm sharing about the law of navigation because this is actually in chapter 4 in John Maxwell's book. He also says this, of leaders need to know which direction they're going. Leaders got to chart their direction for their team to go. So look, if you're a leader, for all you young leaders out here, we got to start charting our course and giving direction to the people on our team. I suggest that you start finding that direction that you are going to start going, and in that direction, start finding that place that your team can face and lead them to that direction. Because people will only follow people that can give them the direction in life. Now, if you could be that compass for them, if you could be the compass for other people in your life, if you can start having that level of compass for them, so many things will happen. Yeah, so many powerful things will happen, and this is what he talks about in this book. So John talks about how there's a trip to the South Pole. There was a race between two men. Their names were Roald Amundsen and Robert Falcon Scott. So Robert Scott's team, they weren't really prepared. They didn't do any training. They didn't do any research. They just packed only for 4 men. They actually picked up a 5th guy to come on the expedition trip all the way to the South Pole. Their goal was to get there first. but they weren't prepared. They didn't prepare themselves. They didn't chart themselves. They didn't do research. They weren't aware of the situation. They weren't even aware of what to pack. But on the other hand, there was another man named Roald Amundsen. And in this book, John talks about this guy. They talk about this guy who was prepared, how he would research and he would talk to the natives in Canada and learn about cold weather conditions. So he would find out about books. He would actually prepare the food on time. He would make sure he has the right shoes for people to walk in the snow, make sure everything was charted. Roald was a good leader who knew where he was bringing his team. As time would tell, John talks about how the journey of Roald Amundsen was. They managed to get to the South Pole and they beat Robert Scott's team by 1 month. They got there faster. But Robert Scott's team, they were slow. They stopped all the time. They didn't know where they were going. They weren't prepared. Some of their people were frostbitten, and some of the people thought they were being a burden, that they actually decided to kill themselves on this journey. That's actually what happened in this journey. Now, Robert Scott, he didn't have his shit together. His team actually died on this trip because of his lack of preparation. They end up dying and they journaled everything that happened, whereas Roald Amundsen, they actually survived on the trip. Now, the main learning lesson from this is making sure that you know what's up and you're planning ahead. Is being aware of your own situation. Now, if you're going to be navigating your team, you got to make sure that your team is set up and your team is set for the right conditions to win. So this is what I did. This is what I did to make sure my team was set up on the right conditions to win, right? I would make sure I have the General Eisenhower matrix where I had 4 quadrants. I would draw it up on a piece of paper or a whiteboard. And on the 4 quadrants, there would be urgent, important. Right here, urgent, not important. Not urgent, but important. Last part is not urgent, not important. Now I have to make sure I do this almost every second day because I need to make sure what's urgent with my team. Is payroll due? Are these things due? Does people need to get paid? Do I need to take care of something? Do I need to take care of a deliverable? Do I need to take care of all this information to make sure these guys are set up? I need to plan ahead for my team. And no, it's no one else's job to make sure I'm prepped. And one of the things I do is I have VAs, right? We have a remote team. Some of them are in the Philippines and they work with us. But I need to make sure they have work to do. So, my team starts at 9 a.m. in the morning and I want to make sure before 9 a.m. I have all my tasks ready. And sometimes I do things last minute. And, I do it all the time. And sometimes I plan things last minute and it can impact the team. But when I do things last minute, this is what happens. I can get screwed up. I can mess up the plan. I can show up late. And I hate showing up late to things. So one of the things that I'm working on is actually showing up on time and showing up on purpose, showing up with resolve, showing up and prepared, showing up to be ready. And look, leaders, we gotta show up prepared for our people. Because if we're not prepared on our own, if we don't have our own things set up for our lives, how the hell can we lead people and guide them on a ship if we don't know where the fuck we're going? So I encourage you guys to get prepared and get set up there, right? And John talks about being able to chart the course for others, knowing what's coming next, and also knowing what's the current situation, right? And he talks about in the book about in the 21 laws is drawing inside for your experience. Actually looking inside in my own experience and looking to see was that successful or not? Being aware of, hey, what's next? What's not next? So are you aware of what's next for your team? Are you aware of how the situation is now? Maybe it's cold outside and you want your team to wear maybe it's cold outside and you want your team to wear t-shirts. Or you want your team to wear shorts, but it's fucking freezing outside and you didn't look at the weather. Then all of a sudden your team is sick. You guys can't even breathe. Your team has a lot of trouble, right? So are you aware of the situation now? Are you aware of what you're bringing your team into? Are you aware of do you have gas in your car? You know, let's say you're planning a trip to like Edmonton or Ontario, and you try to plan a trip and you realize you only have gas to get you down the street. So when you get to the highway, all of a sudden it breaks down, right? So are you aware of your situation now? Are you aware of it now? And then after that is, are you aware of what's next? Are you aware of what's next on the plan? Where do you, let's say you're going on a trip. Where do you have to go? Which highway do you need to take, right? What kind of tires do you need? What kind of chips and food does your people need in the car? Do people need to use the washroom? And because that's the next part, and it's asking yourself the third question is, what are you aware of what's next for your team? You know, are you aware of what your team needs next? For example, does your team need to use the washroom? Do you need to drop off one of your guys at the gas station, right? Do you need to drop off your friend so he can go pick up his car? Do you need to go get more gas because you're about to run out? So are you asking, are you aware of what's next for your team? So there's 3 questions that I gave you here, which is great self-reflection questions of self-awareness. Is warrior leaders, they ask these people 3 questions, and I gave you 3 questions that you can take here. Ask yourself, are you aware of your current situation now? So are you aware of what's happening now for you? What's the situation now? Second question, are you aware of what's next? So what's next on the plan? What's next on the agenda? What needs to be done next? The third question is, are you aware of what's next for your team? So does your team need to use a washroom? Does your team need water? Does your team need this? Be aware of your team's needs. Because look, if you're like me, your team might need to use the washroom. Your team might need to drink water. Your team might need some food. Your team might need a warm jacket or a blanket for maybe if they want to sleep. Are you aware of what's next on your team? Because planning ahead will take you far, and planning, especially in that moment of leadership. So if you haven't donated yet, this is the Young Entrepreneur Fund. If it's in your heart to donate to the Young Entrepreneurs, feel free to do that. The link is down below if you guys want to donate. Feel free to go ahead if you'd like to the Young Entrepreneurs. Let me just share that. Let me put the link down below in the comments. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into the Law of Navigation. This is the Mission Driven Life, episode 201. Hope you guys have a great day today. This is the Mission Driven Life. Take care.